Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica, another episode in the First Person Funhouse series where I take a look at some of my favorite first-person shooter games of all time in the 90s, and we're going to jump right into Quake this week. I remember when this game came out, I was absolutely blown away because I had never seen anything on my computer render in 3D like I had seen Quake do. Before we get too far involved, if you could do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined, we got a Patreon link down there as well if you want to support the channel. But I remember when Wolfenstein came out and I played it and I was probably way too young to do so. And I remember when Doom came out and feeling like, wow, games could never look as good as Doom did. And then all of a sudden, id Software started developing something called Quake. And the initial screenshots just blew my mind. I couldn't understand what full 3D was as far as a computer game was concerned. And then I got the shareware copy of Quake, installed it on my computer, and found out I didn't have a computer fast enough to run it. And then I got a new computer that Christmas because my parents knew I desperately wanted to play this game. So I ended up getting a brand new system just to check Quake out. And I will say, one of the best Christmases ever, and I absolutely do not regret asking for a brand new computer to play one game. Because Quake is just one of those seminal releases that changed so much of what we thought about what a first-person shooting game was. Before Quake, everything was 2.5D. Yes, you were going in and out of backgrounds, but everything was done with background layers and sprites. This is the first time that I had seen a game running in full 3D, and of course, I could have captured this with OpenGL. I could have done this in full 3D acceleration, but this is how I remember first seeing the game run, and to me, this is what Quake looks like. I love all the animations of the enemies. They have this staccato movement to them where there's not that many frames of animation, but the way they move seems almost more evil and more monstrous than if they were really smooth. From the lighting effects in this game, when you shoot your shotgun to things lighting up, to the level design, this was just a game that seemed like it shouldn't be possible when it came out. I just remember me talking about this game with my friends, a lot of who didn't have a computer that was powerful enough to run it yet, and they wouldn't believe when I said that it looked and sounded and played the way it did. They came over to my house, saw it, and they were blown away too. This game is basically the advent of what the modern first-person shooter became in my imagination, because Doom was amazing, Wolfenstein was amazing, but this just felt like something evolutionary. This wasn't a small step in how these games worked, it was a massive step. And then you have something like the soundtrack by Trent Reznor from 9 Inch Nails, and you can just tell how much love and attention was put into this game. And does it still hold up? Absolutely. And Quake is a franchise I feel like actually lost its way after Quake 2. Quake Arena was fun, things like that, but for my money, the original Quake is still the way to play the game because it has this really interesting setting that is both perfectly logical and nonsensical at the same time. We're basically in a medieval Gothic castle. We have some enemies that have rocket launchers, and we have other enemies that are coming and swinging swords at us. So it has this really strange alternate reality, medieval but futuristic setting at the same time, and it's not one that the game's used very often, and I think it definitely plays to Quake's strengths, because this game visually is just so arresting and so interesting that it felt like something amazing, and I will say that it still definitely does feel like that. A lot of the games I've been playing on this playlist, I remember them, I love them, I want to talk about my PC gaming days when I was a kid, but as I was playing them, I realized I wanted to continue to play them, just like when I talked about Blood and saying that I wanted to finish the entire game after capturing that. It was the exact same thing with Quake. I just wanted to keep playing. Now for some of the videos, I've stretched things to 16:9, I've increased the graphical capabilities of them, but for me, this feels like being a kid in the 90s playing this game. I want to play it in software mode, I want to play it in 4:3, I want to make everything look great. The only issue I had running this game was that the soundtrack would not play, so what I've done is taken MP3 rips of the original soundtrack and laid them over the footage of the game. I'm sure if I spent a couple hours trying to get it to run, it would have worked, but the easiest thing for me to do is to fix it in post. So this isn't the easiest game to play if you're going to use the original disc, and that's what I did. I have an original copy of Quake, and I am playing that on Windows 10, but you can download this for $5 to $10 on Steam and definitely enjoy it as well, and it's going to work a lot easier in that respect. What I'm going to do now is just stop talking for about a minute because the sound effects, the monster effects, all the music in the game are outstanding, so I want you to kind of look and listen and feel what the game's all about, and I will be back in about a minute. We'll talk more about Quake, but enjoy. So now you've heard those sound effects and the music behind it, and they're just absolutely spectacular. And a lot of the gun effects and the monster sounds sound like they're coming from a very far distance away or echoing until they're right up in front of you. So they were definitely playing a lot with audio in this game when it was coming out. You weren't just playing in a 3D space, but it sounded like you were in a 3D space as well, the way sounds move around that environment. But this game isn't just really fun to play from its background. Of course, this was amazing when it came out. The technology that it was using was things we'd never seen before, but the game is just an amazing game still to play. I would say if I had one complaint is that you can beat this relatively quickly, and supposedly the stories are that this was really hard for id to make. Not only were they making an entirely new franchise, but they were making the technology to make the game work around it as well. So I think maybe that's why this game feels a little bit shorter, because I'm sure it was quite the development process to not only make Quake as a franchise, but to also build all the different engines and technologies needed around it. But from the monster design to the sounds to the environments to the story, this game is just still one of the best first-person shooters I've ever played. Not just by 90s standards, but just by standards in general. I kind of wish we'd get another Quake game. We've had a revamp of Wolfenstein, we've had a revamp of Doom. Where is my Quake revamp? It doesn't need to be a remake, but I want a brand new game in this series because I absolutely love it. And unfortunately, as it went on, it got a little less interesting, kind of like how Doom 3 was fun but not great. Some of the later Quake games have that same sort of feel to them, but the original to me is still the best, because when this came out I could not believe this was something that was even possible. It felt like you were playing the future right in front of you. And if you want to play this game again today, you can download it from Steam. There's so many different ways to get this. Now I am playing an original disc, and it definitely comes with some issues. I had some soundtrack issues, as I mentioned. I did have a few crashes, and that's going to be part and parcel of playing these older games on a modern Windows 10 machine. I know some collectors that are really into 90s games, first-person shooters or otherwise, will keep legacy hardware around so they can play it on the original operating system. And that's definitely a good recommendation, but for me, when you just want to check them out, most of these games can be made to run on Windows 10. You're going to struggle now and again, but honestly, half the games I download from Steam that are made brand new for Windows 10 crash as often if not more, so really I can't complain too much about the entire process. But no matter how you want to play Quake, you definitely have to play it. If you played it in the 90s and haven't checked it out since, revisit it, it's amazing. If you've never played this game before, you 100% owe it to yourself to check it out, because it still holds up as good as the day it released. And I will say that when this game did release, it was met with near universal acclaim. Every reviewer, every publication, every magazine said the same thing. Not only was the game spectacular, but it was technologically so innovative. And even though it doesn't look as modern and new as things are playing now, so many of the innovations that we have currently in first-person shooter games came directly from Quake. And that's why this game is so important, because I feel like on PC, the first-person shooter genre was pushing innovation harder than any other genre on computers or consoles at that point in time. Of course, you had things like 3D platformers with, Super Mario 64 and Nintendo. Those innovated an entire genre. Quake is doing that for PC gaming and for the first-person genre. And like I said, basically, when you play a modern first-person game, if you've never played Quake before and you go back and play it, you're going to see where a lot of those different things came from. Id Software was ahead of the curve basically every single time they were doing anything, and it 100% shows. But short of that, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I love chatting with you guys. Tell me if you've ever played Quake or if you're going to play it after you watch the video. But we will be back next Tuesday with another episode in the First Person Funhouse, and we'll have videos on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday as well. But here we are at the boss of the first episode, and I do love what they do with it. You're not actually attacking the boss, you're running around to set up these electrical impulse stations that you're then going to step on a trigger and electrocute them. But now that we're electrocuting the boss, that's the end of the video, and we'll see you guys next time. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Bye bye.